Well, hey there, campers, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Camp Cryptid. I'm your host, Erica Fett, and today I'm very excited for today's topic. Now, last episode was all about campfire tales from listeners' stories about UFO lights in the high desert, poltergeists, and a story all about the Bell Witch Cave in Tennessee. But as I was reading the story about the cave of the Bell Witch, I realized I vaguely knew about the Bell Witch, but I decided I didn't know enough about this legend, so I had to do a deep dive, right? So after reading about it, it is truly one of the most perplexing stories that I've read about. And if the events truly happened of the Bell Witch, it's probably hands down one of the creepiest mysteries that I personally have ever read about. Now, if you aren't familiar with this legend, you may be familiar with the Blair Witch Project. It's pretty crazy because I remember going to see the Blair Witch Project in theaters when it came out, and it totally terrified me. I was only in the 8th grade when it came out, but it scared me to my core. And after watching that, I just couldn't stop thinking about those poor people in the woods and their terrible fate. And, you know, a good story about a witch. Who doesn't love a good story about a witch? Now, as I've gotten older and have watched so many movies and know a little bit more about cinema, I'm actually so thankful to have had that experience as a kid, because now I realize how truly fantastic that movie was, and also how awesome it was to see that movie in the theaters in its prime. But the Blair Witch Project was actually inspired by the legend of the Bell Witch. Now, the Blair Witch is also in Maryland. The Bell Witch is in Tennessee. But the Blair Witch has taken some of its roots from this Bell Witch in Tennessee. Now, there's also a ton of other movies that are based off and inspired by the legend of the Bell Witch. American Haunting. And I know there's tons of movies out there. I just actually watched a found footage with my husband the other night that's, I think, called The Bell Witch. But I'll make sure to post all the different movies that you guys can watch if you want to, do a little deep dive of your own about the Bell Witch. But let's dive into the story of the Bell Witch, a mystery full of witchcraft, death, and the demonic torture of a family in Tennessee. So the legend of the Bell Witch has existed for over 200 years. The story dates back to 1804, when John Bell and his family left North Carolina to settle on a 1,000-acre farm around what is now the town of Adams, Tennessee. The Bell family was also quite large as well, and he also had slaves on the property, so the property and the house they're pretty massive. Now, they frequently had guests stay in the home as well over the years, and were pretty much known for being pretty hospitable to people traveling before and after the events of the Bell Witch. The Bell family was known to be involved in the church and became wealthy residents of the area. They were well known around the community, and people fairly liked them. Now, John Bell was fairly liked, and the only problem that was rumored to exist was between him and a local named Kate Batts, who just had a business proposal disagreement with him, but we'll get into a little bit more about her later. But I think that's pretty notable. Now, everything seemed normal for the Bell family until around 1817. Now, according to the story, everything started one day when John Bell was walking through his cornfield. As he was walking, he noticed a strange animal sitting in the corn row, just staring at him. And now, as he got closer, he felt a little uneasy, so he pulled out his gun and shot at the animal, but the animal just ran off. Now, John Bell shrugged that off, thinking, it was just probably some random dog, or, maybe it had mange or something, it looked a little weird, but he really didn't think anything more about it. But other members of the family and some of the slaves on the property would also start to have these weird encounters with animals, and also start to see strange apparitions like a little girl in a green dress swinging under a tree. So the story starts basically with these apparitions and these animal sightings. Now, after those unusual encounters came the strange knocking on the doors and the walls of the house. At first, Bell would disregard the knocking as just someone trying to spook the family. But as he tried to find out what was causing the knocking, they could never find the source of the knocking. Now, after the knocking incidents, the family started to begin to notice weird noises and occurrences around the house, and mostly at night. The children would wake at night to the sound of a rat gnawing and chewing on their bedposts. But when they would grab a candle to look where the sound was coming from, there was nothing to be found every time they went to go look. The gnawing noise would then be heard from room to room by all the members of the family. But as time went on, the gnawing noise would be replaced by more sinister and violent acts. The Bell family started to hear chains dragging across the floors, dogs fighting, sounds like rocks were being dropped on the floors, the sound of someone choking or breathing weirdly. Furniture would fall over on its own, and the sounds of a large animal clawing at the floorboards would now replace that noise of the gnawing. The force also became more physical, like the covers being pulled off at night from the children. Some of the children would even have their hair viciously pulled. One of the children, named Betsy Bell, also would get slapped across her face repeatedly, and the marks of the invisible entity and the hands would be seen. As the physical attacks against Betsy would get harsher, she would be sent to stay with neighbors or at her friends, but the torture would even continue, even while she was away. All of these strange occurrences were also accompanied by Mr. Bell starting to feel a strange feeling in his mouth, like a stick was inside of his mouth, across his tongue pressing on his cheeks. If he tried to eat, it felt like the sticks would press through his cheeks, so he would go through times where he wouldn't even eat. Now, as these occurrences became more violent and intolerable, John Bell started to fear for his family's safety. He confided in his good friend, who was also his neighbor, James Johnson, about these terrors that his family was experiencing. In hopes to banish anything ungodly, Johnson and his wife planned to stay at the Bell residence and pray away the problems. But after a session of powerful praying and worship, they themselves ended up experiencing the unnerving terrors that night at the Bell residence. Now, after Johnson experienced the supernatural happenings in the Bell household, he recommended to John Bell that other members of the community should come over to investigate the occurrences themselves. It became almost like a sideshow act of the community at that point. There were tons of people that came over to investigate. Now, the creepy thing is, the more people tried to communicate with this entity, the more powerful its replies became. What started out with knocks and scratches to answer questions that people asked evolved into whistles, light whispers, and then eventually actually spoken words, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Now, as people would come over to investigate this entity and all of the happenings that were happening at the Bell household, the question would come up, who are you? The entity had a few different spirits that it said it was. The entity replied saying it was a spirit whose burial ground was disturbed, and then later it said it was a spirit whose body was buried in the woods, but their remains were spread, and it was hunting its tooth that was under the Bell house. Now, the crazy thing is, there were actually Native American graves on the Bell property that were from the Trail of Tears, and prior to that were actually discovered years prior to these events. A local named Corbin Hall decided to dig up some of these graves that they found on the property to search for artifacts in an attempt to find some relics that maybe some of the bodies had been buried with. But finding nothing, Hall grabbed the jawbone of one of the bodies and brought it back to the Bell house. Now, in frustration, Hall threw the bone against the wall, knocking a tooth loose from the jawbone, causing a single tooth to fall down into the cracks of the floorboard. Now, this incident was completely forgotten by the Bell family until the spirit reminded them. As word of the witch spread, these people came over from all over to attempt to solve this mystery, or to experience the witch and her chaos firsthand. As more people would talk to the witch and ask questions, more personalities of the witch would be revealed. The spirit referred to itself as spirits that were from Native American graves. It referred to itself as Kate Batts, one of the locals that I mentioned earlier, that was a local woman who had a disagreement with John Bell. Now, Kate Batts was a church-going woman, although the story says she often showed up halfway through the sermons. But she was known around the community for being a bit eccentric and almost a bit pushy. Now, this also led to rumors of basically her being a little weird, led to rumors of her dabbling in witchcraft. And that's what caused a lot of people to kind of steer clear of her in the community. But either way, no matter what this spirit presented itself as, weird stuff was going on. The spirit began to mimic the exact sermons of ministers that gave sermons that exact day at different churches 15 miles apart. There were a ton of other weird things that would happen. I talked earlier about the incident where the jawbone was thrown against and then the tooth was knocked loose. Well, during one of these sessions, the spirit said that since it was looking for its tooth, John Bell decided to rip up the floorboards. Well, the story goes that after it happened and all this effort was put in to find this tooth, the spirit ended just basically laughing in their faces. So the spirit was also known to be a trickster. There were times where the spirit would also say like, oh, I'm a spirit of someone who buried treasure in this exact place along this creek. And it would describe this area of like a treasure being buried under a flat stone. And so these people went out that day to go look for this treasure, right? Well, they'd come back and then the spirit basically would just laugh in their face and basically be like, you guys are just so gullible. So this spirit was I mean, there's so many things. There's so many stories about this spirit. Like I said earlier, like the spirit would mimic the sermons that were going on at different churches 15 miles away, but would be able to mimic and basically recite it back to the ministers, and the ministers would be baffled as to how this was happening, how it knew the exact sermons going on. There was another incident where a person that was investigating wanted to know what their son was doing because he wasn't home. And the spirit would say, okay, well, hold on, let me go check. So it'd go away for a second, or, be silent for a second, and it'd come back and be like, oh, he's reading by the fire. And then come to find out the next day, that guy would come over and basically say, that's so weird because last night I was reading by the fire when my door swung open and swung back shut. And my wife and I both just looked at each other joking around that it was the witch, and it was actually related to this incident. So there were a lot of things that were happening, and the more and more people came and questioned it, the more and more the spirit would either attack people's personal character, would bring up things from their past. There were several instances where if a person was known to be kind of a crappy person, the spirit would kind of call them out about it. Now, if the spirit found that someone was a good person, like the mother, Lucy Bell, who was John Bell's wife, she was one of the only people basically that the spirit loved. One day when Lucy was sick, the spirit brought her actual things to make her feel better. So it's very strange, this entire incident. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, this story completely perplexes me. If this story actually happened and this is an incident that happened, this is absolutely wild and crazy and one of the most insane things that I've read. So yeah, like I said, the spirit basically came in many different forms. And at one point, the spirit actually said it was the embodiment of 4 different children. 3 of the children would speak in feminine voices, and one of them would speak as almost like a little boy. So there's definitely some weird stuff going on, right? The fact that this entity starts out where it's answering questions, like people would ask, in the beginning, people would ask, okay, well, how many horses are in the barn? And then the entity would hear a scratching to answer the question. And as time and as more people gave this entity energy and attention, so it would change, it would evolve into these scratching and knocking, and then change to almost like a light whistle to answer questions, to a light whisper. And then eventually it would grow stronger to answer people, to where people were in a room, it was speaking plain as day to these people as if it was actually in the room among them. Which I think is very strange, the fact that we have multiple people, ministers, families, multiple people from all over. Even the president, Andrew Jackson, was known to have an experience with this. So it is a very well-documented occurrence, but also, is it a story? Is it real? Did this really happen, right? So eventually, with time, as the spirit grew stronger, Betsy Bell was afflicted by almost like seizures where she couldn't breathe and would have very hard times breathing. Now, this also happened to John Bell, the father. So John Bell fell ill after having a seizure, a very violent seizure outside of his house near the front door. So he was actually bedridden for a pretty long time. Now, story goes, as he tried to make himself feel better, he ended up taking a vial of medicine that actually ended up being poison. And as he took this medicine, story goes, the Bell Witch actually ended up saying, I replaced your medicine with a poison. And it was kind of like her running theme that she just wanted to have vengeance on John Bell. She just wanted to see him die, the worst, most excruciating death that she possibly could. And that was what she wanted to do. She often made it known that she had a vengeance and vendetta against John Bell. And honestly, it probably made her day that she killed him. Now, it's also said that at his funeral, after he died from the poison, that you could actually hear her singing drunken songs, basically celebrating the fact that she killed him. Now, she did say that she would stop basically haunting the family, but come back every 7 years. But mostly after John Bell died, these occurrences pretty much stopped. So this is a story that's definitely perplexing. And like I said, this happened in the early 1800s. So what we're relying on are all just stories passed over time, And as time goes on, I mean, this is over 200 years. As time goes on, more parts of the story get, changed or fabricated, sensationalized. And, what probably could have started out as something like with a very simple explanation now is just completely up for the imagination, right? So as I found myself reading the resources and the books, there is a book that was called Our Family Troubles that one of the Bell children wrote that was kind of like his recollection of the events. And, over time, that book has been like republished and re-edited. And there's tons of stories about the Bell Witch that are also related to that area. It's just the question of what could it be, Is this weird instance of an entity actually manifesting itself, becoming stronger as more people give it energy and attention? Is that like a logical explanation for this? Is the explanation, okay, well, it was Kate Batts, the local woman who had a problem with John Bell, who somehow in her vengeance because a business deal went wrong, you wanted to get back at him, Is it as easy as blaming the old eccentric woman for, being the witch, right? Because, usually when we think of witches, we think of old women, right? We relate them to being an old woman in the woods, right? But one of the explanations over the years that people kind of started to take and kind of run with is that people started to think maybe this was a story and a tale of abuse. They shifted the speculations from it being a witch to maybe it was John Bell that was abusing Betsy and causing the trauma maybe to manifest in a poltergeist form. And if that is a situation that happened, whereas it is a case of family abuse, I mean, that adds an entire layer of sadness on top of the entire ordeal. So, like I said, though, this is all speculation. We have no firsthand accounts of what happened here. Then the other side of this is, what if it was completely unrelated? What if this was just an instance of like a poltergeist activity where graves were disturbed? I always joke around on basically all of the episodes because I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and if you're familiar with the area or you're around the area, the North Market, right? The North Market, the old parking lot that used to be in front of it, used to actually have graves that they built upon. And as they basically excavated this area to build the new huge hotel that's going there, they had to put up a big tent to block people from seeing all of the graves that they basically had uncovered, because it was a lot more than they anticipated. And my thing is why, one, are we disturbing graves to build a parking lot over? One, like, why was that a thing that anyone ever did? Like, I just don't understand. I just don't understand that. Like, why would you do that? Like, there's plenty of area for parking lots, and there's literally a parking garage right across the street. Like, why are we doing that? And two, why if we know there's graves, why then are we digging up all those people in their resting place to put a hotel? Like, why is that a thing? You deserve to be haunted. That's all I'm going to say. You deserve to be haunted if you do that. But it's just like, in a situation like this, and you read the situation, you read all of the events that happened, you've got a lot of people in this story who experienced this event. You've got a lot of people who experienced hearing the noises. You have a lot of people who experienced hearing the voices and the witch talking, and the witch and all of her different voices and her manifesting into different animals. You've got people who literally believed that when they were walking, if they saw a certain animal, it was the witch. So was this a case of hysteria, or was this a case of actual hauntings? And, in a situation like this, it's like I always say, it's like the Mulder of X-Files versus the Scully of X-Files, right? It's like, is there a rational explanation? Was it a situation of mass hysteria? And the seizures that John Bell and Betsy Bell were having were actually just medically induced, something that maybe a medical condition that hadn't been in that time period, or was this an actual case of hauntings? You've got a lot of people, a lot of testimonies, a lot of stories that say that people knew this area was haunted. There are situations where a lot of people were still finding graves of Native Americans to this day on their properties in Tennessee. So, we do have that aspect that is an actual fact, that there are graves that are unmarked in that area on the Bell property. So yeah, I think that this one is a really, really interesting really interesting story. Now, if it really truly was a haunting, this is truly to me one of the most terrifying stories of a haunting of a witch. Basically, and the funny thing is I call it a witch, but it's actually just a spirit, right? But it's much more fun to say it's a witch, right? I mean, I guess it could have been a witch if it was someone, maybe dabbling in witchcraft and able to summon different spirits, right? I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting off on a tangent. But either way, I think that this is a fantastic story. I think that it is definitely one that gets my mind just going, right? It's very, very interesting, but it's also very unnerving in many aspects when it comes to the torture that this witch put the family through. So I think it is very interesting in the fact that multiple people came. I mean, there was even a detective who came, I think Detective Williams, who came to investigate for himself. Because like I said, this is one of those things where, people from all over, the more and more the word spread, right? Like we're talking the 1800s, so it's not like there's a lot going on, right? The more and more people wanted to experience it themselves, whether it, to figure out the mystery or to just experience it firsthand. And you've got this Detective Williams who came, and his instance was like nothing was really going on. There's a little bit of like scratching and like knocking, and he would get frustrated that nothing was happening, and he kind of like would mock the spirit, and then the spirit kind of showed him what was up, and then he left being like the most scared person they said that had ever left. But another thing to note too is, there is the question, were the Bell family, like, were they capitalizing off of this incident at all? Like, were they making this up for money? The answer to that is, when people would actually come to visit them, the Bell family would accept no money from them. They would accept no money. Like people tried to pay them for like staying and feeding them or feeding their horses. The Bell family straight up said, no, like we're just trying to figure out what's going on. Like we're not trying to take money and make money off of this. So I think that is another interesting thing to note. But either way, I think it's very interesting how this is an account and a story of an entity becoming stronger the more and more people interact with it and asked it questions. Because honestly, the entity really didn't start doing any type of talking or communicating until people started physically asking it questions. So I think that's super interesting. Now, the cool thing about this is if you are totally, cool with this story and you want to read more, I'll make sure to post all the books and all the resources that I used in the comments so that you can go read the different recollections of everything. But also, if you wanted to, still to this day, and outside of Adams, Tennessee, you can actually go visit the Bell Witch Cave, and there's still a cabin that's on the property. And I believe there's like the Old Bell Cemetery and the Bell Cemetery that you can go visit, as well as a marker for the Bell Witch, because the Bell House has been torn down for some time, but you can still go to the property and see like the little landmark of the Bell Witch. Now, if you are in Tennessee and you have any cool stories or experiences about the Bell Witch or anything you'd like to add, oh my gosh, please send them in. I'm like, this one right here, when I was reading, I just was like reading things and I'd read them to my husband. I'm like, this is like wild to me. And I'm a fan of witches in the woods, right? Like I live in the woods. I'm totally like, I'm down with it. I love it. But it is a very interesting story. And so I'm really happy to get that Campfire Tale story about the Bell Witch Cave. And then that inspired me to kind of like, I was like, you know what? We need I haven't done a witch episode since the initial one, the Pirates and Witches of Salem. And I was like, I just need to do more. And so if you have any stories around your local areas of any witches in the woods or any witchy type of things, please do let me know. I know I have a lot of listeners in England too, so you better let me know some witch stories. So yeah, but that is my little synopsis of the Bell Witch. I think it's a really cool story, and like I said, it's a story right now, but if it really truly happened in this way, that is a wild ride. And holy moly, holy Toledo, right? Like that is a wild one. But when it comes down to it, these stories are fun. And when it comes, like, I think that a lot of what I do when it comes to like cryptid stories or paranormal stuff, it's really just what you believe in. There's really no right or wrong way to approach things. There's never anything wrong with saying like, I want to approach this from a completely scientific perspective where everything is a rational explanation, because I think that's really, really great to do as well. And like I said, like some of these seizures that they were having could have been, a medical condition that just wasn't known at that time. time. So, a lot of these things can be, some things may be rationally explained, and then some things are just like, okay, I can't explain like how these people are hearing like a voice just randomly in the room with them. I can't explain that. And I can't explain how this entity was able to, recite the same sermons that were done that day at churches 15 miles apart. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe they had like a team of people working. I don't know. Maybe there were tunnels underneath the Bell residence that they could like speak under. I don't have the answers. I just think this is a really cool story. And I like to think that there's like supernatural things going on, right? Like, part of me in my heart is like, okay, like, let's pretend like it was something like a supernatural thing. But also makes me very nervous. Like, last night after I was reading, I went outside and I was like on my deck and it was like dark out and I was like, ooh, I can't stay out here too long because it's going to give me the heebie-jeebies, but I loved it. But yeah. So that is The Bell Witch, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And if you have anything to add, or if I missed anything, like I said, there's a lot of things that went along with this. And like I said, it's hard to go over every single incident that happened or every person's experience with this. So I just kind of tried to like tie it up in a nice little bundle for you all. But if you have anything you'd like to add about The Bell Witch, like I said, or you have a story about a witch in your area, please, please, please submit it for a Campfire Tales. I would love to read about it, even if it's just a tiny little sentence like, yeah, I live around here. It's really creepy. Okay, cool. I love it. It'll add to the mystery of this Bell Witch. But you can go to campcryptidpod.com or campcryptidhorrorpodcast.com. That's my website. There's a little contact section if you have anything you'd like to add, or if you have a supernatural being in your area that you'd like me to talk about, or even, do a little deep dive on. I love it. Please just send it in. I love to hear it. Other than that, things have been really great. As far as horror movie wise, I did watch a foreign film called Good Boy, and it is basically a guy has a human dog in his home, and it's very weird, and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I've been on a foreign film kick, so I've been trying to watch a lot of foreign films, and this is one that I watched recently, and I thought it was a pretty good watch. I did watch the movie See For Me and The Portrait as well. I'm trying to think of anything else good. My husband showed me this. I think I talked about this on a prior episode, but if you are into video games, please go watch the trailer for Hellblade 2. It is like a miniature movie, and if you're into Viking lore and weird supernatural, like crazy stuff, it's right up your alley, and it is incredible. And I talked to my best friend this morning, Bobby, about it, and he's like, you have to go play Hellblade 1. You can literally play it in one day, play it before you play Hellblade 2. And so now I'm like, maybe I need to do that, because I'm obsessed with Viking everything. But yeah, like I said, you can always go visit the Bell Cave. And if you end up going to the Bell Cave, or if you've ever been, please send in pictures. I'm trying to think of everything to do, like to wrap up the Bell Witch stuff, because it was just so crazy to read about. And I absolutely had so much fun doing that. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one, and I want to thank everybody, because like I said, it's so cool, because like, I'm one person, right? And when I go to like research cryptids and stuff, every state, like even when I was doing the water cryptid, like and sea cryptid episodes, every state has like something, and it's like so hard to like go through every single legend. So that's why it's like, I get so excited when you guys, Marco, I think, was sending me the information about landers and like the UFO, and like, I'm like, I never heard of that, and now I have to go. So you all are like basically like giving me all the topics and places to go visit, and this is my favorite. But yeah, so if you go to any of these cool places and you have any pictures, please send them in or submit them to the Reddit. There is a Camp Cryptid Reddit. I always try to like, when I'm on Reddit and I see anything cool, or like some kind of like animal that they find, or any type of spooky paranormal stuff or movies, I try to post it on there and try to keep it like really fun and interactive. But please always feel free to post any spooky pictures, or even if you are like a crafty person and you craft anything that's like spooky or cryptid, or anything along those lines, we are here for it. Please always feel free to post in the Reddit. But other than that, I am going to be doing an episode on the Loveland Frogman. I did have Patreon basically all my patrons on Patreon vote on which cryptid they wanted to see this month. So next week, we will be diving into the lore of the cryptid, the famous cryptid, the Loveland Frogman, and I'm very excited. So I'll be making another post on Patreon where every member, even free members, can go and you can suggest a topic, and then I'll have patrons vote on which episode they'd like to see. So make sure if you aren't on Patreon, you can go join for free. I post a lot of like my cosplay shoots, a lot of interactive stuff, just basically getting you guys' ideas on things and just kind of trying to get everybody like involved in the community. And it's like, I love it. So yeah, please go join Patreon for free, completely free. We love it. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And if you have anything to add, please leave it in the comments, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. I love to see your comments and I love to interact. And it makes me, it really honestly makes my day when I see y'all say you like the episodes. Like, I'm like, yes. Oh God, it makes me so happy. And with that being said, if you are enjoying what you're hearing and you're having a good time and you're like, yes, I love this, please make sure to go leave me a review on Apple or Spotify. You can review them and rate the show. I mean, if you hate it, give me a 1. Tell me to go, quit and go back to my day job, right? But if you love it, it's great to hear that. And I love to know that, like, hopefully I'm like bringing a smile to your face, and also we're like enjoying this spooky stuff together. So that's the goal, right? That's the goal. But yeah, other than that, I hope y'all enjoyed today's episode, and I can't wait to bring you the Loveland Frogman next week. We're going to have a froggy good time. I have to do my mom jokes, right? But yeah, other than that, thank you all so much for being the best campers around. You all rock my socks, and it's the best time ever doing these. And I hope you all enjoy it just as much as I do. So hey, in the meantime, go enjoy outside. Go feel the wind on your face and the sunshine rays on your cheeks, and go get some good food in that belly. I always say that, but like, food is the one thing I think that all humans can agree on. Good food nothing beats good food, right? So go get some good food in your belly today. Treat yourself, and have a great time. And until next time, take care.